Chapter 1. The Train Encounter. The gentle rhythm of the train's wheels against the tracks provided a soothing backdrop as Jenny gazed out the window, her mind swirling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. As a student of English literature in her home country, she had always dreamed of truly mastering the language. Now, on this warm summer day, she found herself on a journey that would change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Jenny's attention was drawn to two women sitting opposite her, their animated conversation in English filling the compartment. She strained to understand, catching a word here and there, but the rapid flow of their speech left her feeling overwhelmed. Despite her years of studying English, she realized how much she still had to learn. Gathering her courage, Jenny decided to seize this opportunity. With a shy smile, she leaned forward and spoke in halting English. "Excuse me, learning English. Can I practice with you?" The women's faces lit up with warm smiles. "Of course, dear," the older of the two replied, her voice kind and encouraging. "We'd be happy to chat with you. I'm Margaret, and this is my friend, Elizabeth." For the next 10 minutes, Jenny engaged in her first real conversation with native English speakers. Though she stumbled over words and sometimes resorted to gestures, the women were patient and supportive. They spoke slowly, repeating phrases when necessary, and gently corrected Jenny's pronunciation. As the train approached Jenny's station, she felt a surge of accomplishment. She had managed to communicate, however basically, and the positive experience fueled her determination to improve. "Thank you so much," Jenny said, her confidence growing. "This helped very much." Margaret reached into her bag and scribbled something on a piece of paper. "Here's our contact information," she said, handing it to Jenny. "If you ever visit England, please get in touch. We'd love to see how your English progresses." Clutching the paper like a precious treasure, Jenny thanked them again and disembarked, her mind buzzing with newfound motivation. The brief encounter had shown her the real-world application of the language she had been studying, igniting a spark that would drive her forward. Over the next 6 months, Jenny threw herself into improving her English with renewed vigor. She set up a rigorous study schedule, dedicating time each day to various aspects of language learning. She began translating texts, not just for comprehension, but to understand the nuances of expression in English. Her evenings were filled with English language films and TV shows, first with subtitles in her native language, then with English subtitles, and finally, without any aids. Jenny also started keeping a journal in English, forcing herself to think and express her daily experiences in her target language. She joined online language exchange forums, connecting with English speakers around the world who were eager to help her practice. As the months passed, Jenny noticed a significant improvement in her skills. Words that once seemed foreign now flowed more naturally. She found herself thinking in English more often, and her confidence in speaking grew steadily. One day, as Jenny was reviewing her progress, she came across the contact information Margaret and Elizabeth had given her on the train. An idea began to form in her mind. A bold, exciting idea that both thrilled and terrified her. With trembling fingers, she dialed the number. "Hello, Margaret. This is Jenny, the girl from the train. I've been working hard on my English, and I was wondering would it be possible for me to visit you in England?" Margaret's enthusiastic response sealed Jenny's decision. It was time to take her language learning to the next level. With a mix of nervousness and excitement, Jenny began planning her trip to London, knowing that this journey would be the ultimate test of her newfound skills. As she packed her bags and prepared for the adventure ahead, Jenny couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come since that fateful train ride. Little did she know that her real journey was only just beginning, and London held experiences that would transform not just her language skills, but her entire life. Chapter 2. Arrival in London. The bustling streets of London greeted Jenny as she stepped out of Heathrow Airport, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The cacophony of English voices surrounded her, no longer muffled through television speakers or tinny computer audio, but alive and vibrant in the air around her. Clutching her luggage, Jenny navigated the tube system, her months of preparation paying off as she deciphered the colorful map and made her way to the small flat she had rented for her stay. As she settled in, the reality of her situation began to sink in. She was here, in the heart of the English-speaking world, ready to immerse herself fully in the language she had been studying so diligently. The next morning, bright and early, Jenny made her way to the language school, where she had enrolled for intensive English classes. The building was a charming mix of old and new, its historic facade housing modern classrooms equipped with the latest language learning technology. As Jenny entered her assigned classroom, she was struck by the diversity of her fellow students. There were faces from all corners of the globe, each person sharing the common goal of mastering English. The atmosphere was charged with nervous energy and anticipation. Their teacher, Miss Thompson, entered the room with a warm smile that immediately put everyone at ease. "Good morning, everyone," she greeted the class cheerfully. "Welcome to your first day of English immersion. I'm excited to embark on this linguistic journey with all of you." Miss Thompson's approach to teaching was unlike anything Jenny had experienced before. Instead of diving straight into textbooks and grammar exercises, she began by engaging the class in conversation, encouraging them to speak about themselves and their reasons for learning English. Language is not just about rules and vocabulary, Miss Thompson explained. It's about communication, expression, and connection. In this class, we'll focus on using English in real-life situations. You'll find that the more you use the language, the more natural it will become. As the first lesson progressed, Jenny found herself becoming more comfortable speaking up. Miss Thompson's method created a supportive environment where mistakes were seen as opportunities for learning rather than sources of embarrassment. At the end of the class, Ms. Thompson introduced an intriguing concept. "I want each of you to keep a language adventure journal," she said. "Every day, write about one new experience you have in English. It could be a conversation with a shopkeeper, a funny misunderstanding, or even a new phrase you learned. This will help you connect your classroom learning with your real-world experiences." Energized by the first day's lessons, Jenny left the school with a spring in her step. As she walked through the London streets, she made a promise to herself to embrace every opportunity to practice her English. That evening, determined to start her language adventure immediately, Jenny decided to visit a local cafe. As she approached the counter, she took a deep breath and placed her order, consciously applying the pronunciation tips she had learned in class. "One cappuccino, please," she said, carefully enunciating each syllable. The barista smiled warmly. "Certainly. Would you like anything else with that?" Jenny hesitated for a moment, then decided to push herself further. "What do you recommend?" she asked, proud of herself for initiating more conversation. As the barista described the various pastries on offer, Jenny found herself understanding more than she expected. She ended up with not only a cappuccino but also a delicious-looking scone, along with a sense of accomplishment that warmed her more than any beverage could. Back in her flat, Jenny eagerly wrote about her cafe experience in her new journal. As she reflected on the day's events, from the classroom to the coffee shop, she realized that she had already taken significant steps in her language journey. London was offering her countless opportunities to learn and grow, and she was determined to make the most of every single one. With a contented sigh, Jenny closed her journal and looked out of her window at the twinkling lights of the city. She could wait to see what tomorrow would bring in this exciting new chapter of her life. Chapter 3. The Power of Reading. As Jenny settled into her routine in London, she found herself increasingly drawn to the wealth of English literature surrounding her. Miss Thompson's classes continued to challenge and inspire her, but it was during a particular lesson on the importance of reading that Jenny's approach to language learning took a significant turn. Reading, Miss Thompson explained to the class, is one of the most powerful tools in your language learning arsenal. It exposes you to diverse vocabulary, complex sentence structures, and cultural nuances in a natural context. Intrigued by this idea, Jenny raised her hand. But how do we choose what to read? And what if we don't understand everything? Miss Thompson smiled, clearly pleased by the question. Excellent point, Jenny. The key is to find material that interests you and is just slightly above your current level. This way you're challenged but not overwhelmed. As for understanding everything, that's not necessary or even expected at first. The goal is to immerse yourself in the language and gradually build comprehension. Inspired by this advice, Jenny decided to make reading a central part of her language learning strategy. That weekend, she visited a charming bookshop in Notting Hill, its shelves packed with everything from classic novels to contemporary magazines. As she browsed, Jenny remembered Miss Thompson's words about choosing interesting material. Her eyes fell on a collection of short stories by contemporary British authors. The slim volumes seemed less daunting than a full novel, and the variety of stories appealed to her curiosity. Back in her flat, Jenny curled up in a cozy armchair by the window, the book in her lap and a dictionary by her side. She began to read, determined to stick to Miss Thompson's advice of not looking up every unfamiliar word. At first, it was challenging. Jenny found herself tempted to reach for the dictionary with almost every sentence. But as she persevered, something remarkable began to happen. She started to grasp meanings from context, her brain making connections and inferences almost subconsciously. Days turned into weeks, and Jenny's reading habit flourished. She progressed from short stories to novels, from simplified news articles to full-fledged newspaper reports. Each text brought new words, phrases, and cultural insights that she eagerly noted in her journal. One evening, as Jenny was engrossed in a British classic, she realized with a start that she had been reading for over an hour without once reaching for her dictionary. The words flowed in her mind, creating vivid images and emotions. It was a breakthrough moment. She wasn't just decoding English anymore. She was experiencing it. Excited by her progress, Jenny shared her experience with Miss Thompson and her classmates. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and soon, a small book club formed within the class. They would choose a book to read each month, then meet to discuss it in English, pushing their language skills even further. As Jenny's vocabulary expanded and her comprehension deepened, she found that her speaking and writing naturally improved as well. The phrases and structures she encountered in her reading began to find their way into her conversations and compositions. But perhaps the most unexpected benefit came in the form of cultural understanding. Through books, Jenny gained insights into British humor, social norms, and historical contexts that no textbook could adequately convey. She felt herself becoming not just a speaker of English, but a true participant in the culture. One rainy afternoon, Jenny found herself in a lively discussion with a group of locals at a pub book club. As she confidently shared her interpretation of the month's chosen novel, she marveled at how far she had come. The nervous girl who had once struggled to order a coffee was now debating literary themes with native speakers. That night, as Jenny added another entry to her ever-growing language journal, she reflected on the power of reading in her journey. It had opened up not just a language, but a whole new world of ideas and experiences. With each page turned, she was not only learning English, she was falling in love with it. Chapter 4. Balancing Study and Work. As Jenny's language skills continued to improve, she realized that her savings were dwindling faster than anticipated. The vibrant life of London, while exhilarating, was also expensive. Determined to extend her stay and continue her immersive learning experience, Jenny knew she needed to find a way to supplement her income. One afternoon, after an particularly engaging class discussion about idiomatic expressions used in the workplace, Jenny approached Miss Thompson. "I've been thinking about getting a part-time job," she confided. "Do you think it would help or hinder my English learning?" Miss Thompson's eyes lit up. "Jenny, that's an excellent idea. A job can be an incredible opportunity for language immersion. You'll be exposed to everyday English, including colloquialisms and professional jargon that we don't always cover in class. Just be sure to find something that allows you enough time to continue your studies." Encouraged by her teacher's enthusiasm, Jenny set out to explore her options. She visited the school's career center, where a helpful advisor suggested she try the local job center for the most up-to-date listings. The job center was a hive of activity, with people from all walks of life searching for opportunities. Jenny felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as she approached the front desk. "Excuse me," she said, proud of how steady her voice sounded. "I'm a student looking for part-time work. Could you help me?" The receptionist, a friendly woman named Sarah, smiled warmly. "Of course, dear. Let's see what we have that might suit you. What kind of work are you interested in?" Jenny hesitated, realizing she hadn't given much thought to the type of job she wanted. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "I'm studying English, so I suppose something that would help me practice would be ideal." Sarah nodded understandingly. "In that case, I'd recommend looking at positions in cafes or shops. They offer plenty of opportunities to interact with people and practice your English. Plus, the hours are often flexible, which is great for students." As Sarah scrolled through the listings, Jenny's eye caught a posting for a part-time position at a quaint bookshop cafe not far from her flat. It seemed perfect, a chance to combine her love of books with the opportunity to practice her English in a real-world setting. With Sarah's help, Jenny applied for the position and was thrilled when she was called in for an interview just a few days later. She spent hours preparing, rehearsing common interview questions with her classmates and carefully selecting an outfit that struck the right balance between professional and approachable. The day of the interview arrived, and Jenny found herself standing in front of the Bookmark, the charming bookshop cafe. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door, the cheerful tinkle of a bell announcing her arrival. The owner, a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Pemberton, greeted Jenny warmly. As the interview progressed, Jenny was pleased to find that she could understand and respond to most questions without much difficulty. Her extensive reading had equipped her with a rich vocabulary, which she now put to good use in describing her passion for books and her eagerness to learn. Mrs. Pemberton seemed impressed by Jenny's enthusiasm and her improving English skills. "Well, my dear," she said with a smile, "I think you'd be a wonderful addition to our little team. When can you start?" Jenny left the shop with a spring in her step, elated at having secured the job. As she walked home, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she'd come. Just a few months ago, the thought of a job interview in English would have terrified her. Now, it felt like another exciting step in her language journey. The following week, Jenny began her new role at the Bookmark. Her duties included serving customers, restocking shelves, and occasionally helping with the cafe's book club events. Each shift brought new challenges and opportunities to improve her English. She learned to handle various accents and speaking speeds as she interacted with a diverse range of customers. The daily small talk and book discussions helped her become more fluent and confident in her speech. Even the occasional misunderstanding became a learning opportunity, often resulting in a good-natured laugh shared with a patient customer. Balancing work and study proved to be a challenge, but Jenny found that each complemented the other beautifully. The practical experience she gained at work brought her textbook knowledge to life, while her continued studies helped her understand and use the new vocabulary and phrases she encountered at the shop. As weeks turned into months, Jenny noticed a marked improvement in her English skills. She was thinking in English more often than not, and even found herself dreaming in her adopted language. The nervous girl who had arrived in London was blossoming into a confident, fluent English speaker. One evening, as she was closing up the shop, Mrs. Pemberton approached her with a warm smile. "Jenny, dear, I just wanted to say how impressed I've been with your progress. Your English has improved remarkably, and the customers adore you. You've become an integral part of the Bookmark family." Jenny felt a wave of pride and gratitude wash over her. Her journey was far from over, but in that moment, she knew that her decision to work while studying had been one of the best choices she'd made. She was not just learning English. She was living it one conversation, one book recommendation, and one cup of coffee at a time. Chapter 5. Mastering Pronunciation. As Jenny's confidence in her English skills grew, she began to notice subtle nuances in the way native speakers communicated. While her vocabulary and grammar had improved significantly, there was still something in her speech that marked her as a non-native speaker. It wasn't until a particularly memorable class that Jenny realized what was missing from her linguistic toolkit: mastery of pronunciation. The revelation came during a group discussion when a usually quiet Korean student named Minjun raised his hand hesitantly. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I have a question about pronunciation. I understand many words, but when I speak, people often don't understand me. How can I improve?" Ms. Thompson's face lit up with enthusiasm. "That's an excellent question, Minjun. Pronunciation is often overlooked in language learning, but it's crucial for effective communication. Let's discuss this as a class." She turned to address the entire room. "Many of you may have similar concerns. The challenge with pronunciation is that we often use our mouth muscles the same way we do in our native languages, which can result in accented speech. While accents are beautiful and part of your identity, clear pronunciation ensures you're understood easily. Jenny found herself nodding along, realizing that this was exactly what she had been experiencing. She had the words, but sometimes struggled to make herself understood, especially in noisy environments like the bookshop cafe. Ms. Thompson continued, there's a technique that can help significantly with pronunciation. It's called shadowing. Essentially, you listen to native speakers and repeat what they say, mimicking not just the words but the intonation, stress, and rhythm of their speech. Intrigued, Jenny leaned forward in her seat. This sounded like exactly what she needed. Let me demonstrate, Ms. Thompson said, pulling up a video on the classroom screen. It showed a native English speaker talking about their daily routine. Ms. Thompson played a short segment, then paused the video. She then repeated the speaker's words, matching the intonation and rhythm perfectly. Now, let's all try together, she encouraged. She played the segment again, and this time, the entire class repeated after the speaker. Jenny was surprised at how different it felt to consciously mimic the native speaker's patterns. Over the next hour, the class practiced shadowing with various audio clips, ranging from casual conversations to formal speeches. Jenny found herself becoming more aware of the subtle differences in how sounds were formed, the rise and fall of sentences, and the way stress could change the meaning of words. Excited by this new technique, Jenny decided to incorporate shadowing into her daily routine. She began by using audiobooks of the novels she was reading, playing short segments and repeating them until she felt she had captured the essence of the speaker's pronunciation. At work, Jenny started paying closer attention to her colleagues' and customers' speech patterns. During quieter moments at the bookshop, she would quietly repeat phrases she had heard, trying to match the musical quality of native speech. One day, a regular customer commented on the change. Jenny, dear, your English sounds different somehow. It's lovely. You sound almost like a native Londoner now. Encouraged by this feedback, Jenny doubled down on her efforts. She discovered podcasts on British culture and history, which not only improved her pronunciation but also deepened her understanding of her adopted home. However, Jenny's newfound focus on pronunciation came with an unexpected challenge. As she became more aware of the intricacies of English sounds, she found herself hesitating more in conversations, second-guessing her pronunciation of even familiar words. Noticing her struggle, Ms. Thompson took Jenny aside after class one day. Remember, Jenny, the goal isn't perfection. It's communication. Don't let the pursuit of perfect pronunciation stop you from speaking. Embrace your unique voice. It's part of who you are. This advice was a turning point for Jenny. She realized that her accent was not something to be eliminated, but rather refined. It was a part of her identity, telling the story of her journey with the English language. With this new mindset, Jenny's confidence soared. She began to enjoy the process of improving her pronunciation without the pressure of trying to sound exactly like a native speaker. Her unique blend of her native accent and her newly acquired British intonation became a point of interest, often sparking conversations with curious customers at the bookshop. As weeks passed, Jenny found that her improved pronunciation had an unexpected benefit. It was helping her connect more deeply with the language and culture around her. She could now appreciate the subtle humor in British comedies, the emotion in poetic readings, and the passion in political debates in a way she couldn't before. One evening, as she was hosting a book club event at the Bookmark, Jenny realized how far she had come. As she led the discussion, her words flowed smoothly, her pronunciation clear and confident. The attendees listened attentively, engaged in a conversation without any signs of misunderstanding. After the event, Mrs. Pemberton approached her with a proud smile. "Jenny, that was wonderful. Your progress is remarkable. You've not only mastered the language, but you've found your own voice in it." Jenny beamed, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over her. She had discovered that mastering pronunciation wasn't about erasing her identity, but about finding a harmonious blend of her native tongue and her adopted language. It was about being understood, but also about being herself. Chapter 6. Expanding Horizons. As Jenny's linguistic skills flourished, she found herself yearning for more opportunities to apply her newfound confidence. The bookshop and her classes provided a solid foundation, but she felt ready to push her boundaries further. It was time to expand her horizons and immerse herself even more deeply in the English-speaking world. One afternoon, while shelving books at the Bookmark, Jenny overheard a conversation between two customers discussing a local sports club. Intrigued, she politely interjected, "Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear. Are there any sports clubs open to newcomers in the area?" The customers, pleasantly surprised by her interest, enthusiastically shared information about various local teams. Jenny learned that the community center nearby hosted a diverse range of sports activities, from football to table tennis. Excited by the prospect of combining her love for sports with language practice, Jenny decided to visit the community center that very evening. As she entered the bustling building, she was greeted by the sound of squeaking sneakers and the rhythmic bounce of balls. At the reception, Jenny inquired about joining a team. The receptionist, a cheerful woman named Sarah, explained the options available. "We have a football team and a table tennis club that are always welcoming new members. The football team has training today at 5 p.m. if you'd like to give it a try." Jenny's eyes lit up. Football had always been her favorite sport back home, and the thought of playing it here in London was exhilarating. "That sounds perfect. Where should I go?" Sarah directed her to the field behind the center, and Jenny made her way there, a mix of nervousness and excitement bubbling in her chest. As she approached the field, Jenny saw a diverse group of people warming up. Taking a deep breath, she walked up to who appeared to be the coach. "Hello," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I'm Jenny. I heard you welcome new players." The coach, a friendly-faced man named Dave, broke into a wide smile. "Absolutely. We're always happy to have new faces. Have you played before?" Jenny nodded enthusiastically, explaining her experience back home. Dave invited her to join the warm-up, and soon Jenny found herself running drills with her new teammates. To her delight, the team was a melting pot of nationalities. There were players from Brazil, Japan, Russia, Spain, Argentina, and Italy, among others. English served as their common language, creating a perfect environment for Jenny to practice while doing something she loved. As they played, Jenny found herself communicating effortlessly in English, calling for passes, giving directions, and even joking with her teammates. The language flowed naturally in this context. Free from the self-consciousness, she sometimes still felt in more formal settings. After the training session, the team gathered for a cool-down chat. Jenny found herself engaged in conversations about football strategies, cultural differences in sports, and funny language mix-ups they'd all experienced. She was thrilled to discover that she could keep up with their rapid-fire banter, even contributing a few jokes of her own. One of her teammates, Carlos from Spain, commented on her English skills. "Jenny, your English is fantastic. How long have you been in London?" Jenny smiled, realizing how far she'd come. "Just a few months, actually. But I've been working hard at it." "Well, it shows," Carlos replied. "You sound like you've been here for years." As Jenny walked home that evening, she felt a new sense of belonging. Not only had she found a way to enjoy her favorite sport, but she'd also discovered a new community where she could practice English in a relaxed, natural setting. Over the next few weeks, Jenny threw herself into her new sporting life with gusto. The regular training sessions became a highlight of her week, offering a perfect balance to her studies and work at the bookshop. She found that the physical activity helped clear her mind, making her more receptive to learning both on and off the field. Moreover, the friendships she formed with her teammates extended beyond the football pitch. They often met for post-training dinners or weekend outings, providing Jenny with even more opportunities to immerse herself in English conversation. One Saturday, the team decided to have a picnic in Hyde Park. As they sat on the grass, sharing food and stories, Jenny marveled at how comfortable she felt. She was laughing at British jokes, discussing current events, and even explaining idioms from her native language to her curious teammates. It was during this picnic that Jenny had a realization. Her journey with the English language had become about so much more than just learning words and grammar. It was about connecting with people, understanding different cultures, and finding her place in this vibrant, international community. As the sun began to set over the London skyline, Jenny looked around at her new friends, a warm feeling of gratitude washing over her. She had come to London to learn English, but she was gaining so much more: a second home, a global perspective, and friendships that transcended language barriers. That night, as Jenny made her final entry in her language journal before bed, she reflected on how sports had unexpectedly become a crucial part of her language learning journey. It had provided her with a natural, pressure-free environment to practice, while also enriching her life with new experiences and relationships. She realized that expanding her horizons hadn't just improved her English, it had transformed her entire London experience. Jenny fell asleep with a smile on her face, excited for what new adventures tomorrow might bring in her ongoing journey of language and life. Chapter 7. The Power of Thinking Aloud. As Jenny's time in London stretched into months, she noticed a subtle but significant change in her relationship with the English language. No longer was it just a subject to be studied. It had become a living, breathing part of her daily life. However, she still felt there was room for improvement, particularly in her ability to think and respond quickly in English. One day, a new student joined their class, Elizabeth, an Italian girl who had briefly attended the school the previous summer. Jenny was amazed by Elizabeth's fluency and natural-sounding English, despite having spent less time in an English-speaking country than Jenny had. Curious, Jenny approached Elizabeth during their break. "Your English is incredible," she complimented. "How did you improve so much in such a short time?" Elizabeth smiled warmly. Thank you. Actually, I owe a lot to Ms. Thompson's techniques. Do you know about thinking aloud? Jenny shook her head, intrigued. Elizabeth explained, it's a method where you verbalize your thoughts in English. Instead of thinking in your native language and translating, you train your brain to think directly in English. Fascinated by this concept, Jenny asked Miss Thompson about it in their next class. Miss Thompson was delighted by Jenny's interest and decided to dedicate a lesson to the technique. Thinking aloud, Miss Thompson explained to the class, is a powerful tool for language learners. It helps bridge the gap between passive understanding and active use of the language. When you think aloud, you're essentially having a conversation with yourself in English. She went on to demonstrate the technique, narrating her actions and thoughts as she went about simple tasks like organizing her desk or deciding what to have for lunch. The class watched in fascination as Ms. Thompson transformed mundane activities into opportunities for language practice. Now, Ms. Thompson said, I want you all to try. For the next 5 minutes, I want you to think aloud about your plans for the weekend. Don't worry about making mistakes. The goal is to get comfortable expressing your thoughts in English. As the classroom filled with the murmur of students talking to themselves, Jenny closed her eyes and began to verbalize her thoughts. This weekend, I think I'll visit the British Museum. I've been wanting to go for a while now. Maybe I'll invite some friends from the football team. We could get lunch afterward at that new cafe near the museum. At first, Jenny felt self-conscious, but as she continued, she found the words flowing more easily. She was surprised to find herself using vocabulary and phrases she hadn't realized she knew. Over the next few weeks, Jenny incorporated thinking aloud into her daily routine. She narrated her actions as she made breakfast, verbalized her thoughts as she walked to work, and even practiced by talking to herself in the mirror. At first, her flatmate gave her odd looks, but Jenny explained the technique, and soon her flatmate was trying it too. The impact on Jenny's English was remarkable. She found herself responding more quickly in conversations, with words and phrases coming to her naturally without the need for mental translation. Her confidence soared as she realized she was beginning to think in English more often than in her native language. At work, Jenny's improved fluency didn't go unnoticed. Mrs. Pemberton commented on how smoothly Jenny was now handling even the most complex customer inquiries. You're not just speaking English anymore, Jenny, she said proudly. You're living it. One day, as Jenny was hosting a book club discussion at the Bookmark, she had a moment of realization. As she led the group in a lively debate about the novel they'd read, she found herself effortlessly expressing complex ideas, making jokes, and even using idiomatic expressions she'd picked up from her daily life in London. It was then that Jenny understood the true power of thinking aloud. It wasn't just about improving her English. It was about fully inhabiting the language, making it a part of her identity. That evening, as Jenny made her usual entry in her language journal, she reflected on her journey. She had come so far from the nervous girl who had arrived in London months ago. Through reading, shadowing, immersing herself in social activities, and now thinking aloud, she had not just learned English, she had embraced it as a new facet of herself. As she closed her journal, Jenny smiled, thinking ahead to all the conversations, experiences, and opportunities that awaited her. With her newfound confidence and fluency, she felt ready to take on whatever challenges London had in store for her next. Chapter 8. Putting it all together. As Jenny's time in London neared its 6th month, She marveled at how much her life had transformed. From her first nervous days of struggling to order coffee, to now confidently leading book club discussions and bantering with her football teammates, her journey with the English language had been nothing short of remarkable. One sunny afternoon, as Jenny was arranging a new display of classic novels at the bookmark, Mrs. Pemberton approached her with an exciting proposition. "Jenny, dear," she began, her eyes twinkling, "we've been invited to participate in a local cultural festival next month. I was wondering if you'd be interested in giving a short talk about your experience learning English and immersing yourself in British culture?" Jenny felt a flutter of excitement mixed with a tinge of nervousness. Public speaking had always been daunting for her, let alone in a second language. But as she considered the opportunity, she realized it was a perfect chance to put all her newly acquired skills to the test. "I'd be honored," Jenny replied, her voice filled with determination. "Thank you for thinking of me." Over the next few weeks, Jenny threw herself into preparing for the talk. She drew upon all the techniques she had learned during her time in London. She read extensively about public speaking, shadowing TED Talks to improve her presentation skills. She practiced thinking aloud as she structured her speech, allowing her ideas to flow naturally in English. Jenny also incorporated her experiences from the football team, the bookshop, and her classes into her talk, weaving together a narrative that showcased not just her language journey, but also her personal growth. As she practiced her speech, Jenny realized how each element of her language learning journey had contributed to her progress. The extensive reading had built her vocabulary and comprehension. Shadowing had improved her pronunciation and intonation. Her work at the bookshop and participation in the football team had given her confidence in real-world interactions. And thinking aloud had helped her to think and respond naturally in English. The day of the festival arrived, and Jenny found herself standing before a diverse audience in a charming community hall. Taking a deep breath, she began her talk. 6 months ago, I arrived in London with a suitcase full of dreams and a head full of textbook English, she started, her voice clear and confident. Today, I stand before you not just as a speaker of English, but as someone who has lived and breathed this beautiful language and culture. As Jenny continued her speech, she felt a sense of flow she had never experienced before. She shared anecdotes about her first day in class, her adventures in the bookshop, and the friendships she had formed on the football field. She explained the techniques she had used to improve her English, encouraging others on their own language learning journeys. The audience listened attentively, laughing at her humorous mishaps and nodding in understanding at the challenges she described. Jenny could see Mrs. Pemberton beaming proudly from the back of the room. As she concluded her talk, Jenny felt a surge of emotion. Learning a language is more than memorizing words and rules, she said. It's about opening yourself up to new experiences, connecting with people from all walks of life, and discovering new facets of yourself. Through English, I've not only found a new way to express myself, but I've also found a second home here in London. The applause that followed was thunderous. As people came up to congratulate her afterward, Jenny was struck by how easily she was able to engage in conversations, switching effortlessly between casual chats and more serious discussions about language and culture. That evening, as Jenny made her final entry in her language journal, she reflected on how far she had come. She had arrived in London as a student of English, but she was leaving as a confident speaker with a rich network of friends and experiences. She realized that her journey with English was far from over. In fact, it was a lifelong adventure. But now, she had the tools, the confidence, and the passion to continue growing and learning. As she closed her journal, Jenny felt a sense of excitement for what the future held. She had come to London to learn a language, but she had gained so much more, a new perspective, lifelong friends, and a deeper understanding of herself. With a smile, Jenny looked out at the London skyline, the city lights twinkling like the countless opportunities that lay ahead. She was ready for whatever came next, armed with not just a new language, but a new outlook on life. Epilogue. Jenny's progress. As Jenny packed her bags, preparing to return home after her transformative 6 months in London, she couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey she had undertaken. The nervous girl who had arrived with a basic grasp of English had blossomed into a confident, fluent speaker with a deep appreciation for the language and culture she had immersed herself in. Her progress was evident in every aspect of her life. At the Bookmark, she had gone from a hesitant new employee to a valued team member capable of handling complex customer inquiries and even leading engaging book club discussions. Her friendships with her football teammates had deepened, their conversations flowing effortlessly in English, peppered with jokes and cultural references she now understood and appreciated. In her final week, Jenny received a surprise visit from Margaret and Elizabeth, the women she had met on the train at the very beginning of her journey. As they chatted over tea at the Bookmark, Jenny was struck by how different the experience was from their first encounter. She was no longer struggling to form basic sentences. Instead, she was confidently sharing stories about her time in London, her improved English allowing her to express the nuances of her experiences. Margaret and Elizabeth were amazed by Jenny's progress. "My dear," Margaret said, her eyes twinkling, "you sound like a true Londoner now." Jenny laughed, recognizing the compliment, but also appreciating how her unique accent, a blend of her native tongue and her adopted English, was a part of her identity. She had learned that fluency wasn't about erasing her origins, but about finding her own voice in a new language. As she said goodbye to her colleagues at the Bookmark, her teammates from the football club, and her classmates and teachers at the language school, Jenny felt a bittersweet mix of sadness and excitement. She was leaving London, but she was taking with her not just improved language skills, but a wealth of experiences, friendships, and a newfound confidence in her ability to adapt and thrive in new environments. On her last evening in London, Jenny stood on the banks of the Thames, looking out at the city that had become her second home. She thought about the techniques she had learned, the power of extensive reading, the effectiveness of shadowing for pronunciation, the confidence gained through real-world interactions, and the fluency developed through thinking aloud. Each had played a crucial role in her language learning journey, coming together to transform her relationship with English. But more than that, Jenny realized that learning English had been a journey of personal growth. She had pushed herself out of her comfort zone, embraced new challenges, and opened herself up to a world of new possibilities. The language skills she had gained were invaluable, but equally important were the life skills she had developed: adaptability, perseverance, and the confidence to express herself in any situation. As she turned to take one last look at the London skyline, Jenny felt a surge of gratitude for the city and all it had taught her. She knew that while this chapter of her journey was ending, her adventure with. As she turned to take one last look at the London skyline, Jenny felt a surge of gratitude for the city and all it had taught her. She knew that while this chapter of her journey was ending, her adventure with the English language was far from over. Jenny boarded her flight home with a heart full of memories and a mind brimming with new knowledge. She was no longer just a student of English. She had become a citizen of a global community, equipped with the tools to connect across cultures and express herself in a language that now felt like a second skin. As the plane took off, Jenny opened her journal one last time, penning a final entry. London, you've been more than just a city to me. You've been a classroom, a playground, and a home. Through your streets, I've not only learned a language, but discovered a new version of myself. Whatever comes next, I know I'm ready. Because now I don't just speak English, I live it. With a smile, Jenny closed her journal and looked out the window at the receding lights of London. She was heading home, but she knew that in many ways, her journey was just beginning. The world had opened up to her in ways she never imagined, all thanks to the power of language and the courage to embrace new experiences. As the city faded from view, Jenny felt a sense of excitement for the future. She had come to London to learn English, but she was leaving with so much more: confidence, friendships, and a global perspective that would shape the rest of her life. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Jenny knew she was ready to face them, armed with not just a new language, but a newfound belief in herself and her abilities. The end of her time in London wasn't just the conclusion of a language course. It was the beginning of a lifelong journey of growth, discovery, and connection. And Jenny couldn't wait to see where this journey would take her next.